Okay.
And let's go over here. I'll point at you.
Okay.
And we'll do a wall dog.
A wall what now?
Wall dog.
Okay.
That's my own name for it. Down dog, essentially,
Oh, okay.
but against the wall. And we're going to be really, really specific with what we want to feel here.
Okay.
So when I do set my hands up, I'm going to set my hands up in this kind of universal position that I always ask someone to put themselves in, which is elbow pits up, index fingers at about 12 o'clock on each side.
Okay.
And then we're going to go slightly outside of shoulder width. So if your arms are straight on, you can always just go out just a little bit. And see how we got this nice lean going forward, right?
Yep.
So the first thing I want to feel is my shoulders and my scapula depressing gently. And I want to keep that depression, formulate pressure into my palms, and push my tailbone away. And at the same time that I push my tailbone away, I'm really trying to feel myself going into a slight anterior pelvic tilt, but with my rib cage down. I'm going to take a deep breath at the end and exhale till I feel that rib cage bury itself. Good. And on the way back up, depressing the shoulders and feel the palms pull the wall down. Good. Same feeling. Depressing first. Pressing into the palms. Nice anterior tilt. Exhale, burying the rib cage. Good. As you pull the wall down now, start to squeeze the glutes. Keep that going. We'll go for about a minute here. Thirty seconds. Fifteen seconds. 3, 2, 1. Good. Nice job. We'll get a loaded linear next. This is where we'll start paying attention to the foot. We're going to do the hard side first, so that right foot will be the one that you're standing on. I'm going to stagger my stance and really try to concentrate all of the weight on the forward foot. Should be about 90-10. When I sink, I want to make sure that I'm sinking at my ankle, so really allowing the ankle to bend. And then I can feel the Vibra just skate down my body until I'm in my deadlift position. So right now, the higher up we are, the more in a squat position we'll be. So when we do deadlift, we don't want our knee to go straight. We don't want our weight to travel back toward the back foot. We want to sink into it and hinge at the same time. And when I'm done, my body should resemble an open book. So this femur is the bottom portion of the book. The butt is the binder. And then the torso is going to be the other portion of the book. So pretty much like so.
Okay.
Yeah. When I do come up, this back leg is going to come forward. And I'm going to reach that straight arm to the sky with a low rib cage. Bring the foot back. And right back into my bookend hinge.
Okay.
Yeah, way to fix it. Good. Less weight on the back foot. Good. Slightly behind. You want to come and pitch yourself a little further forward. Yeah, that's good. tall as you can in that position.
Okay, so rip off there.
Take your time. Yep. Good, so right now at the bottom, pause right there. This is coming to a level femur. Get that angle a little bit higher. Yep, and that'll allow you to pitch forward into more of a deadlift position and less of a squat.
Yeah, you know, I know the names of these exercises, but truly, I never had very good education on what they're really supposed to look like, so.
No worries. And from one body to the next, I mean, the positioning will be slightly different, right? For a person like me who really doesn't have the healthiest ankle complex, you might see some differences as well. But from a lift as much as you can perspective, which demands your body structurally to be in the best position possible, deadlift, when you get down that parallel, you're gonna be wasting energy for about 15 degrees until your body comes to that forward pitch. Yep. And mainly because there's a straight bar in front of you, right? Your body's trying to create this most efficient path utilizing your center of gravity, because the weight's in front of you, your center of gravity is a little bit different.
Right. Well, I imagine like anthropomorphic dimensions play into angle and
Absolutely.
all that.
That looks a lot better. Last one here, standing tall.
Much as I have worked with this right foot to get balanced, still find myself trying to balance like this. It's like, why? I don't know why.
Add a few more things to your arsenal for sure.
Yeah.
Switching sides here.
All right.
Good. A little less depth into that bending. Yep. Perfect there. Remember how that feels. Four. Three. Two. Nice. Last one. Awesome. Nice job. So with the deadlift that I learned initially, there was a lot more of a straighter knee, right? So hip flexion became this big lever positioning, right? And
I think that's kind of what I associate with it.
yeah, when I first learned it, you know, it was like if your torso wasn't level to the ground, you weren't deadlifting, right? And then I got a bunch of different perspectives from power lifters, from people who were doing like volume work with deadlifts, and they all often told me that this is not a wrong position to lift in, but more efficiently, you want your weight to be a little more centered, right? And for a person with big ankles, feet on rails is okay. For me, ankles not so great. I need to just wing out a little bit, and then my torso really fits in between. And when I do grab the weight, I'm able to grab the weight on the outside, on the inside, no problem. But I also feel like my whole foot, not just my heel, my whole foot now feels weight, right? Whereas here, all of my weight would be drifting back, and then my hamstrings would get the majority of this. And on top of that, when my hamstrings would get tired, I would get shearing, right? So all of my vertebrae being in this position with gravity, when my muscles get tired, would do that.
Right.
And that would be the end of my deadlifting for about a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? So whereas with powerlifting, you ever hear of Louis Simmons? Rest in peace, Louis Simmons. He died this year. He's probably in his 70s or something. But he was one of the biggest powerlifting coaches on earth, essentially. Westside Barbell Club was his thing. But oftentimes when I would hear him coach, especially for competitions, he would say, bend your ankles so you feel your shins touch the bar first, right? And you'll know that you're at a good distance, that you won't be losing your center of mass, right? Because when you do put your legs back, the bar can oftentimes drift away, and then you have to adjust, right? And he says that your power position from lifting, or deadlifting specifically, looks pretty much like a jump position. So if you're gonna jump,
interesting.
right, that's where your power is coming from.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that's
And the moment that you put yourself in this position to jump,
right.
you'll feel like you have to readjust,
Yeah.
right? But he says, yeah, and that's going to create a straight line up, and your center of mass would be a lot more in place for efficiency.
That's a really good picture. We did so much jumping for the whole MoveNat certification thing. So many different jumping patterns and stuff. And honestly, I thought I knew how to jump till I took that. It's like, I don't know how to jump either. But that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and then that applies also to kettlebelling, right? Which is why a lot of times when I was teaching kettlebelling, when I first got my certification, you would hear a lot of people very fearful of kettlebelling, right? And it's just because when that pattern of hinging becomes the dominant pattern, where your body goes all the way here during the lift, sometimes when you do try to traject that bell up, your back does one of these.
Yeah.
Right? And when that happens, then you have vertebral integrity that's not stacked. So then L4, L5, all of those, or rather L5, L4, all the way up the line, it's almost like you're testing each one. Which one is strong enough, right? And then one of them will tell you, I'm not strong enough.
Yeah, I already have bulging discs at like L4 and L3, and I think because of this rotation, a little bit of shearing, deadlifting, kettlebell swings, I have to keep it really short and the weight light, otherwise I start feeling my SI joint right away.
Yeah, lots of good stuff can happen there for sure.
Yeah.
So next up, we're going to be giving more direct information to the feet as well. Actually, we'll start on the treble foot. So again, staggered stance, my back foot is always pushing my weight forward. And as I touch down, I want to go with a cross body motion. This is going to make more weight go to my forward foot. All of my toes try and maintain as much spread as they can. And when I do sink, it's very much like our deadlift pattern. The only thing is I'm trying to touch the ground just outside of my pinky toe. And then come on up nice and tall, touch the ground, allow rotation just outside the pinky toe, and nice and tall. Super simple.
Okay.
Just 3 more here. Good. Switching feet.
Sounds like, I can't remember the name of the guy now. Music for 18 musicians. What's that guy's name? Anyway, just reminded me of it.
Last 2.
I think I'm realizing that I spent so much time in Katie's work integrating this idea of vertical shins that I don't do knees forward very much.
Yeah, and I think that, that has a lot of value, the vertical shin technique. But at the same time, when the spectrum of movement is looked at, The ability to drive forward while still maintaining
Yeah.
the center of mass
Absolutely.
is a good idea as well.
Of course, it makes sense.
I think, and I can't speak for Katie, but I think that the majority of the people that she's worked with already lose this position so much that she wants to try and keep more innervation to the spots that are not getting it. Right?
I think the way I interpret it anyway is that her idea is that most people overuse their front line, underuse their back line.
Yeah.
And so anything you can do to make people use their back line more
Yeah.
is,
I get it.
yeah.
Yep. So now we're going to do a very similar motion with the Viper.
Okay, cool.
So all I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to go into my hinge, right? Really utilizing my ankle bend to sink me down centered. And then with my opposite hand, I'm gonna try to reach as far across without losing a tall spine as I can. And if you notice, I'm not coming into a squat position. I'm coming into more of a deadlift position, reaching as far off the midline as I can and then right back up. And that could be anywhere between your belly button and your rib cage held.
Okay. All right. So, like. that.
Yep, so try one thing at a time now. I'm gonna sink first, make sure I'm in my position, and then I'm gonna reach across. Five's go. Good. He still has a lot of weight on it. Three go. One more. And switch. We'll get two more here. One more. Good, nice job. So the vertical shin positioning, right, has a lot of nuance to it. So originally in exercise science, they used to tell us when you squat, your knees should definitely not go over your toes, right?
Right.
So for me, what I know now is that, everyone's ankles and tibias behave a little bit differently, right? For me, they were frozen for a very long time. And I think that, because of the mindset of my knees should never exceed the position of my toes, it was a lot more difficult for me to reinnervate that movement, right? But where I see a lot of people squat is when they go down to a depth of below parallel, they more often than not lose their heel positioning, right? So this may be, this may be where, that thought process of, don't go past your toes began, right? And more often than not, when you do allow your heels to pop up, you lose a center positioning of the foot. You lose the entire foot, right?
Yeah.
So the knees really have to be prepared for such things. And this is where sissy squats come in, right? Sissy squats is like the epitome of knees over toes, right? Pulling stuff.
Why sissy? What is this?
No idea.
Okay.
No idea.
All right.
It's a stupid name.
Yeah.
But whenever we're pulling,
yeah.
right? Same deal. If we're pulling in accordance with pulling as heavy a load as we possibly can, our knees are definitely going to travel over our toes, and it starts here, right? So this is the knees over toe positioning. And really, when you start to utilize that positioning, your anterior tips work in a totally different fashion. They start to go into dorsiflexion with a lot more of a load. And it's very, very similar to the information that your meniscus and all of those tissues are getting from a sissy squat. So I would say that it's not wrong to go knees over toes so much as the way you go knees over toes is very important. The ability to have dorsiflexion when you're going knees over toes is important. The ability to have the entire foot active when your knees are going over toes is important. If you look at Ido Portal practitioners, right, when they squat, their knees are way out here, right? I have a friend named Kyle who squatted for 45 minutes during the lecture that we went to together. And the entire time, his butt was on his heels, number one. His tailbone was about yay far away from the ground. And his knees were probably about 5-6 inches in front of his toes. And I don't have ankles like that. So for me to do that, my knees would probably be crying afterward.
Yeah.
Right? But it's not contraindicative to the human capability to be able to squat that way. And if you look at Asians, right? Their knees, their ankles are like this, and their knees are out here while they're eating.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean,
it's all that so much in Singapore. A lot of the guest workers, you'd see them at lunch, having lunch under the freeway overpasses and stuff, right? And they're all, way, way down in here with their knees way, far more dorsiflexion than I can have here, eating and
comfy.
Talking. Yeah.
Super comfy.
Yeah, and it's like, wow.
And you'll never, almost never, I guess, because anything is possible, but you'll never see someone, concerned with a knee over toes position. Right? It's just so normal to them.
Yeah.
But I do agree with Katie in the sense that that vertical shin positioning stops you from losing what is most important for a body that doesn't have those things.
Yeah.
Right? So I mean, it's very person specific, but I think that when we start to learn all of the other possibilities and start to learn how my tibia should be able to translate, how my talus should be able to allow that translation, how my feet shouldn't be frozen, eventually the knees over toes technique can be adapted, and you'll develop a well-rounded knee because of it. There's actually a dude, and I forget his actual name, but he has a profile that's called Knees Over Toes.
Oh, I think I've seen that one.
And his knees have had quite a past of being destroyed until he developed this Knees Over Toes strategy.
Okay.
And he's actually part of the Palanquin group. So I don't know if you're familiar with Charles Palanquin. He also died probably about, I want to say 2 years ago, of heart complications. Who knows why? But Charles Palanquin trained like Olympic lifters and stuff like that. And super, super useful time under tension technique was due to Charles Palanquin's theories.
Okay.
But the Palanquin group also utilizes tibial activation, which creates a knees over toes technique for squatting, single leg stuff, pistols, right?
Yeah.
If you can't get your knees to gravitate gradually over your toe print, you will not be able to do a pistol. You will fall so far back, right? So again, I'm not trying to say that Katie's wrong. I'm just saying that her information is probably...
No. Don't get me wrong, I love Katie's work, but I've done a lot of other things, and it's just one person's viewpoint around,
and I think
she's got great points.
I think she's right about everything she says, but it's specific to a population.
Exactly.
And we just have to know our bodies and know that our bodies can be better.
Yeah. I've been doing a lot of studying with Gait Happens and Lauren O'Hayan, and one of the things that I love about their work is very similar to what you're saying right now. It's just that everybody's body can express certain things and can't express other things. But if the body should be able to express that, then we should try to express that, because if you can only express this portion of this set of movements, then we've lost all this other ability to utilize those.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I actually went to go play with a little capoeira on Sunday, and it's my first capoeira class ever. And
There's somebody out here doing that?
yeah, apparently, I mean, he was trying to make this class happen for quite some time. I met him at a potluck
Okay.
in Swim, and he's like, yeah, I teach capoeira. My class, nobody comes. And I'm like, I'll come.
Oh, I would come.
Yeah, so it's on Sundays. Actually, I think we're meeting at Carrie Blake this Sunday at 10:30 if you're interested.
I would come.
Yeah.
I watch it with I have a bunch of capoeira on my Instagram feed.
Awesome.
So I'm like, oh, that sounds fun.
Awesome. So in front of the amphitheater at 10:30 this Sunday, we're meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, so what I noticed about myself is that as mobile as I am in comparison to a lot of people, I know that I'm not perfect, so I'm always analyzing. And in this position of trying to reach over toward the ground, I noticed my internal rotation was not making me feel comfortable. And another thing is, during the point, I remember my friend Kyle again, of expressing how many different positions he could squat in. When he squats ass to grass, as they call it, he can put his knees together.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, his knees will stay together. His ankles still express that full dorsiflexion.
Wow.
It's almost like his toes are gonna kiss his shins.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But this is a guy who, he tells me, my mom always had me barefoot as a kid. I never wore shoes.
Lucky boy.
And I was forced to go outside and just go. So he found himself in trees. He would be in for hours looking at fish in the river, right? So what does that entail? Like, you gotta be very, very close.
Right.
He did this challenge, and I'm gonna stop yapping, but he did this challenge where you had to pick up a bag from the floor with your teeth,
Oh
no
my
hands, yeah? And he squatted down. He made it look so easy. He was like, challenge done. But he actually put the bag on the floor, and the bag is about yay big, and went down. His spine's beautiful. He grabbed it and stood up, and then he's like, I'm gonna make that harder. He flattened the bag, placed it on the ground, completely flat paper bag, and went down with his teeth and picked it up.
No
And then
way.
I said, I'm gonna put a penny on the floor. I put a penny on the floor, and he's like, you're gonna make me grab this penny with my mouth. And he surely did.
Wow.
He lifted
Oh my God.
from the floor with his butt still pointing toward the ground.
That's
So
amazing.
this is spinal ability, hip ability,
Yeah, a lot of
mobility. But when we
dorsiflexion.
load him up, his body's information changes, right? So when I put like 100 pounds on a deadlift, his body's already saying, all right, this doesn't feel great. And he would be vocal about it, right? So when we were strength training, like eventually we got him up to about 250 pounds. But we oftentimes had to give his body the information he was happy with afterward. So we would keep the sessions really short. And, but again, everyone's a little different, right?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
somebody with very good mobility,
It's really
the minute you load them up, things change. Things
Wow.
change. Yeah,
I mean, I
Dude,
can't even
I
imagine.
I have to ask him to make a video for me so you
Yeah,
can see it, because
seriously.
it's just beautiful. And it inspires me, right? Because
Yeah.
I know that if I keep training my ankles every single day, they're gonna keep getting better.
Yeah.
But I wanna be able to pick up a bag from the floor with my blips.
That's a new challenge.
As useless as the skill is,
It's a great party
Right?
trick, though.
the only other person I've ever seen do something similar is my 4-year-old.
Yes, exactly.
Right? And
Children.
she just plops down. She actually went into a squat and put her head on the floor and looked up at me one time. And I was just like, damn.
I know. And you know, that's the thing is, I mean, I think I probably did. I spent a lot of time outside by myself as a kid doing just those kinds of things, but you know, saddle shoes and shit like that for school, and you know, this just ruined you.
Yeah, societal norms, right?
Yeah.
Like, oh, that's normal.
Yeah.
We screw ourselves up with all of that. But we're not exempt, like, nobody is not prone to these things, right? Nobody's exempt from actually having these detriments kind of introduced to them. But as we learn about them, we gotta try and get rid of them.
Yeah, take them out. Take them
Yeah.
out.
So now we're gonna go onto the ground. We're gonna do a round of very similar motion.
Okay.
We're doing a down dog here, but I
Okay.
want you to remember how it felt, right? So whereas here, same positioning of my elbow and my fingertips, relatively being at about 12.
Yeah.
I push into my palm. I feel my rib cage drop with an exhale before I come out of this position. Same thing on the ground.
Okay.
When you do come back up, I want that same feeling of a gentle pulling of the floor as I squeeze my glutes to extend the hips. Yeah. Rib cage down. Gently pulling the floor back toward your feet, back to the start position. Pressing into the palms like you're trying to push your tailbone away from your palms. Exhale, drop the rib cage. Good. You felt that little bit of flexion that happened at the end of that? Reinforce a slight anterior pelvic tilt feeling. Nice. Good. While keeping that anterior pelvic tilt, try and allow your heels to go with gravity. Ooh. That's going to be a lot more information for that posterior line. Nice exhale and drop on the rib cage. Ten seconds. One more. Anterior pelvic tilt, drop the ribs. Gently pull the ground toward the feet. Good. Nice job.
Better. It's getting better, but man, I have to really think about that rotation.
Yeah, yeah. And then as you go overhead, you know, a certain amount of that is lost,
Yeah.
right? Because the
Yeah.
arm wants to go into a slight internal rotation.
Yeah.
But the more we drop the rib cage from that overhead position and try our best to try and keep the feeling of external rotation. The same position will not happen.
Right.
I mean, until you basically pails and rails your external rotation to be perfect,
Yeah.
which is never perfect.
Yeah.
But yeah, dropping the rib cage gives all of these opposing tissues, mainly the lats, and then all of the tissues going into the pelvis also play a role in driving down.
Yeah.
So a really great way to kind of reformulate the down dog thinking.
Yeah.
So next up, going into our staggered stance, I come on down the very same way I did before, and I would encourage to bend the ankle first. Then let the hinge happen. You'll find yourself in a totally different position. When you do come here, I want you to reach away from the forward foot. Bend back. So kind of changing how the load is distributed. Every time I do push away from that forward foot, or that grounded foot rather, I'm gonna feel that forward foot really gain a lot of weight, right? Because my body has to kind of displace a little bit. Yeah?
Okay. That's harder than it looks.
Good. And shorter step back. The closer that back foot is, the less of a likelihood of us reaching our tailbone past that midline. Nice. Always feeling that viper right against the body. Allow the elbows to go straight. Nice straight lines. 8 reps. Three to go. Looking good. 2. Last one. Good. Setting that down. We're going to get a nice wide foot split stance position. Do a little bit of a frontal plane split squat. When I do go down, I want to try and reach without allowing this elevation, right? I want to make sure I'm rotating with depressed shoulders across my midline. Try and touch just outside of the pinky toe if you can, and come right back up. Good. Keep it going. Good. Try and rotate after the position is finished. Good. Good. Pause for a second. Now I can see that, it's very similar to mine. I'm very comfortable here. If I go here, I can really sink down nice and low and comfy, right? Almost like a, what do they call that? Cossacks,
yeah.
Right? So, but when I am internally rotated, totally different position.
Yeah.
So with this, I want to make sure that number one, I'm going to bring you in just a little bit so we can try not to go to our comfort zone. And when we do reach, I want you to think about reaching with the hip.
Reaching back.
So reaching laterally. Yeah,
Okay.
so you're hinging, you're reaching back fine. But when you are reaching, this guy wants to poke out a little bit. I know how that feels.
Okay.
But imagine that there's this wall. Yeah.
So the knee is going
Yup.
forward and not wide.
Yeah, so this is going to be an action position. And right now, pause.
Yeah.
So just now when you reach, there was a lot of flexion here.
Yes.
I want you to reach with just the rotation. Good. And then reaching across. That's it. So that way the spine is tall, and this portion of your scapula is not rising to accomplish that reach.
Okay.
Yeah. So is it okay to do that? It's okay to be able to do that, but if that happens every time we reach, especially with a load, that's going to be some referred action going on.
Okay. Okay. So.
Yep.
So
So imagine
here.
your hips are trying to reach this wall. Yup.
But down.
Yeah, so it's just about going toward an outside line. Anywhere between the space of your hip and your foot height is going to be fine as we rotate. Good. Nice hip reach there. One more. Good. And when this arm reaches forward, allow this shoulder to do the exact opposite, and you'll feel space here. Otherwise, when you do reach, you're going to be doing one of these. Right? Yeah. Now switching sides, same deal. Give you a target here. Good. Less knee action. Try to keep the knee in line, almost like this bookend is in the way. Yep. Good. 2 more. One more, let the hip hit first, and then rotate. Good. And the reason why I say let the hip hit first and then rotate is not because I always want it done that way. It's just when the concentration happens in that manner, you'll see more often than not that this won't happen, right? So I actually intentionally reach to that hip's end first. And this is a very subtle translation of the hip,
Yeah.
right? With a load, this is going to be especially advantageous, right? Because now, from this position, I can go deeper into a Cossack position by letting my leg out, right? I can produce power going forward,
Right.
right? I can produce power going laterally this way,
Right.
right? It's very much a jump position for
Okay.
this hip,
So
right?
it's
And if
like
I
a-
try to jump here,
Right. You don't have the.
I have to travel a little bit of a distance to feel that point at which I can spring,
Yeah.
right? And with this one, we definitely want to be in that ready or jump position more often than not.
Okay. Okay. So, just
Yeah,
hip.
yeah, that foot can stay planted. Exactly,
Okay.
yeah. So now we're gonna start to combine some motion.
Okay.
So from this position, I'm gonna step out. See where my bookend is? I'm gonna rotate. I come back to center. Step out, trying not to let that knee go to its happy place. Rotate. When I do rotate, I wanna make sure that I'm not bending in my rotation. I'm not allowing that elevation to happen so much as I'm rotating in my reach. And it's very much this kind of turn, reach. When I do reach with my scapula, there is a slight protraction, but there's no elevation. Ready?
We'll see. Okay. So.
Yep, you can go step out. We'll make it dynamic.
Okay.
Good. Good. As you move, always thinking tall spine. I'm initiating with my hip, and anytime I reach, I'm reaching with my scapula. We'll keep alternating sides here. 20 seconds. Three, two, one. Good, nice job. So next up, I'm gonna play with my footprint. And because that right foot always feels like, oh, the left foot's gonna be taken over soon, we're really gonna concentrate when we do fall back. And the tendency to go for that straight tibia positioning is big, right? So I might feel like all of a sudden I lose my dorsiflexion because my body's just used to this motion, right, of hinging with this erect tibia. But when I do land, again, I want to try and apply that kind of springy feeling. Yep, and it's a super short step. You should feel like this hamstring gets into a stretch almost. Straighten that knee forward.
So you come up on the heel or on the with the heel up?
So you can come feet together,
Okay.
but it's very much like I'm bracing my fall, decelerating it. Yeah.
Whoops.
Nice positioning, big dorsiflexion. Good, see how that feels on the opposite side. And you can feel how when you do go there, my hamstring is like, okay, I sense the stretch, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Make sure that foot stays connected. You can make an adjustment to a shorter step. Good, when that big toe sends the ground in front. Keep it going. Nice. Have a big toes. Try and press just a little bit. Good. A little less flexion. You should be able to see the lettering on your shirt if you had some. Yeah.
Yeah, this hamstring's considerably tighter than the other one.
One more here. Good. Now we're going to give it some more information. So, short step is going to be something we want to remember. Always being able to see the letter on the letters on the chest as you hinge. That's another cue that Louis Simmons used, and it's another cue that my mentor, Michelle Belcourt, used quite often. Right? In action positions, you will rarely ever see someone's lettering disappear. Right? You'll see them here, right? And whatever they're doing, speed skating.
So kind of chest up still.
Yeah, so proud chest without losing your rib cage,
Okay.
right? And deadlifting as well, right? If I'm deadlifting, you should still get a glimpse of the lettering on my chest. And in this position, same deal. Because if I do lose the lettering, again, that power position is kind of lost. I gotta come up to right about here before I can actually spring to the next position if I needed to.
Okay.
So when I do get into my hinge, I'm trying to maintain that good amount of force on that foot. This foot is actually going to be allowed to come up now, and that's going to produce more information to the posterior tissues. And I'm reaching toward the space in front and coming back feet together.
So, I can do this, and I will do this, but the only thing I'm struggling with in my head is that I know that I like to do this to get my chest up. So
just thinking of
thinking for a second.
Yeah, thinking of a tall spine from tailbone
Yeah.
through the head, and thinking about trying to keep the tall spine through your crown is going to be a good idea. And that looks good.
Yeah, it's easier this side is tolerable. I can do that, but this side I start to want to do other things with my ribs.
Take your time, feel it out.
All right, so I'm not switching sides or staying on one
We're
side.
staying on one side. And remember, speed is not a thing at this time, so slow and steady is a good idea.
Okay. Okay.
Taking a step back,
Right, step back.
allowing the toes to look up toward your head. Right hand's going to be reaching. Yep. Good. And I want you to try to reach without raising the scapula into elevation. So always thinking about reaching with protraction straight ahead. And you're always going to be aiming for the space in front of the foot without touching down.
Without touching.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep. Feet together as you come up. And then plant and sink. Good. Good. The more you pull your toes up, the more fascial information you're going to be getting. Oh yeah. Seconds. Good. Switch sides. Nice depression of the scapula there.
So tight.
Slow and steady.
So tight.
Slow and steady. Good. Remember that your torso allows rotation to happen, but the reach is not happening over here. It's more so happening in the space in front of that other foot. Seconds.
Nice. Wow. Good stuff. So this is, again, with Viper Motion, it's like, if I say this will fix your ankle mobility, probably not. If I say this will fix a foot issue, probably not. It adds to, right? So it adds to the ability for your entire foot to feel what it needs to feel in order to support you. It adds to the integrity of the body by incorporating more fascial tissue in the loading, right? Because we're loading way off of your midline, we're reaching way off of midline. So this is about, number one, developing some sort of robust tissues in these structures that are outside of those deep joint tissues. And it's also teaching us with load how, where our lanes are, number one, and number two, how to make things more efficient, right? So while this is probably not the best thing for saying, you know what, I'm going to enhance your hip capsule's ability to externally rotate, this is kind of incorporating how the hip capsule is functioning under the load within its lanes, and then all the robust structures that surround that hip capsule, right? So all of the structures at the sacrum.
Yeah.
Whenever you're
I
reaching,
can feel that when I do it a little wrong, my SI's like, no.
yeah, this is another reason why we want to take our time, and another reason why we're only using 8 pounds, so 4K. So when we do this, there is a hip decoupling that happens, right?
What do you mean by hip decoupling?
So the sacrum is here.
Yeah.
This is one side of your hip versus another side of your hip. Between the sacrum and the
SI joint.
the iliosacral junction,
Yeah.
right? The SI joint essentially is here, right? And then that space a lot of times becomes fused together. So whenever we're doing this, one end of the space is staying relatively parallel to its adjacent partner, and then the other one is actually doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this half of my pelvis already lives a little bit here.
Yeah.
It's just, it's so much better than it used to be, but anytime I would sit on the floor and kind of, roll back and forth, it would be clunk, 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 clunk. Now they're a little bit more in sync. They're way more in sync, but they're still not adjusted fully.
So this technique basically makes those subtle motions happen, and this is another reason why I wouldn't say, let's load you up with a 12K, right? And
Right.
let's go heavier. No, this is about kind of nailing the position and telling all of those structures that support that area, i.e. when you reach with this leg straight, you feel that hamstring line start to tighten up. And then when you reach with your right arm, all of this tissue back here starts to pull.
Yes.
So you have this cross or diagonal line
Right,
that actually is created, which crosses along the sacrum,
right.
right? And to kind of make those structures more robust and have more options is always a great thing, especially with any iliosacral issues.
I'm all
But
about
again,
the options.
doing it kind of thoughtfully and tenderly as you go is a good idea, right? I'm not going to say reach, right?
I can't work like that for the most part anyway. Sometimes I try to speed it up and it does not end well for me.
Speeding up in general can happen if we turn up the speed, like the volume on a radio, right? Like instead of going, I'm saying 3, no, I'm not going to go to 10, right? I'm going to go to 3.5, maybe 4.
So bad at that.
So next step, we're going to go into our uppercut position.
Oh yeah, okay.
And I'll show you how this looks. And this is going to be one of the things that we utilize as far as like a sister exercise that feeds into a flow, right? So this here is the opposite end, and the subtlety at the hip is it's decoupling in the opposite direction if I plant my feet and try to stay nice and tall. And I'm going to squeeze this glute to feel all of my weight onto my forward foot. And then I come back, and I'm going to place it next to my hip and hinge slightly. Step forward, reaching as far up toward the ceiling as I can. It's almost like I'm trying to touch the ceiling. And you can feel how when I hinge, I'm actually giving momentum to that Viper that helps me to actually lift it without using all my muscles. And this is another thing about the Viper is that it's less of a muscular intention. right? It's utilizing all the fascial tissues plus the ability to harness momentum and create efficiency under load. So we want to use less muscle, utilize the ability to create the right positioning that allows me to have an advantage when utilizing a super heavy load if I needed it to.
Yeah, this is exactly the positioning that I think my sister blew a disc. Oh gosh, a number of years back. But she was hefting fertilizer from somewhere into a wheelbarrow and was trying to use momentum to throw it and did want to, I don't know, something like that. Yeah, so.
So I think that a lot of people too, like, especially when doing yard work and stuff, don't take into account that how many times did you rotate the vertebra in your spine during the course of the week?
Right.
Right? And then you went into the
Never.
yard and tried to toss some heavy shit around.
Yeah.
But again, this is another reason why this is a good thing to incorporate, because you get those subtle motions going, you get a higher frequency of all of the things working in unison, and then your body becomes really good at using less energy and doing those things like projectile tossing, right?
Yeah, 40-pound bags of fertilizer.
That's a heavy bag to toss.
Right?
And I'm thinking she's probably not in the 200-pound range, right?
No, and she's like this tall.
Oh, wow.
She's really petite.
Oh, wow.
And she's always been really strong. She's really strong, but she was a water skier, and really athletic. But yeah, I mean she's turning 70 in a couple weeks. So
God bless.
I know.
So we'll start with the weight at the side. We'll hinge slightly. Remember, we're never going to be down here. We always want to be in somewhat of a jump position with our hinge. And then we step. And I reach with intent. Seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. Now I'm going to combine those two motions.
Okay.
Keep that going. 30 seconds here. This way. Yep.
Forget so easy.
Good. In that transition, you can allow that backhand after the reach to go straight, and that'll create some momentum with a little rocking motion. Just remember, anytime an elbow stays locked in place and you feel like you're actually carrying it, you're losing energy.
Okay.
So protraction's okay. You just don't want the elevation portion.
Okay.
One more. Yeah. Good. Switch it.
Okay, I have to think about that for a second.
Yeah.
That is okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
And step. So you're stepping forward with your left. So go ahead and do that hinge again.
Okay.
And
Here.
then step forward with your left foot. Yep. and then
I'm
you're
all
up.
messed up. There we go. No, wait. Is that right?
So you gotta be on the opposite side. Yep. And then as you come down,
Yes. Okay. Okay. There we go. Dyslexia for the win. That's
this
really-
brain confusion will always happen. No one is exempt.
Oh, come on. I
No.
can't blame it on my ADD or my
But
dyslexia.
the good thing is that even when you're really good at all the Viper motions that I can think of, when you start out, instead of that brain confusion lasting for 3 sets, it'll be like literally a minute. You know what I mean? Of like, oh, let me configure this.
Yeah.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Good. We're gonna go practicing a halo again. This is one of the things that I like to practice for a lot of different reasons. Coordination is definitely one of them, but positioning of my head not moving out of the way of my Viper is gonna be an indicator of better shoulder motion, right? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you to start here. We're gonna simplify this. I'm gonna first create an arc press. Then I'm gonna let that arc press come behind my head. Opposite arc press, then to the chest. And I'll switch. Arc press, let it come behind my head. Arc press, behind the head, arc press. Keep that going. Do a short round at the top, and then we'll lengthen everything. And I'll always stop right at the clavicle.
Moving my head out of the way.
Good, so keep moving. In practicing this exercise, when done this way, can be very muscular, right? So I'm gonna teach you how to incorporate a little bit of motion from the rest of the body that makes this more of an efficient motion, and is the reason why, you know, I can put probably 105 pounds on me and do the same motion. And it's not because my shoulders are strong, it's because the rest of my body's actually aiding this multifaceted movement, right?
Okay.
Pause.
All right.
So from here, I'm actually gonna let it rest on my shoulders. I can feel how this wants to make my shoulders elevate. I'm gonna start to gently pull my shoulders away. And when I do pull my shoulders away or pull my scapular down, I can actually feel how my grip becomes tighter on the Viper. It's almost like I'm trying to bend the Viper, right?
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So with that position, you can always feel if this is a compensatory action or not, and this in itself might be something good to practice. But to make the halo a little bit less energy consuming, this translation is really gonna be my friend. And when I do translate, I want it to be less salsa, right? And more teapot. And when I do a teapot, it's almost like my spine is holding this erect position. If I do feel my rib cage start to go this way, then I'm gonna lose energy, right? I'm gonna be utilizing energy to formulate a correct position at some point when I come up to tense up. So what I wanna do is, I wanna make believe that as I'm hinging and translating, I'm gonna let my arc press happen, and then my lines are gonna go straight. So it's like I'm dumping it off my shoulders, right? But before I dump it off my shoulders, I'm trying to decrease the amount of space I have between my shoulders and the ground. So I'll show you that again. If I do this, a lot of space between my shoulders and the ground, very muscular, needs shoulder strength to do that if this got heavy. But if I took this weight and did this, now I'm closer to the ground. When I do this, it starts to fall off my shoulders, right? Now I'm gonna harness that momentum and let it come to my side, spin it back, and back onto my shoulder. And you can see how my hips becoming more active in that creates more momentum, right? Kind of makes this easier to accomplish, yeah? So now I'm gonna go full circle all the way around my body and let the same translation happen on the opposite side.
Okay. Ah,
Yeah?
okay.
Keep it going. Good. Allow those elbows to completely go straight. Straight lines create less energy consumption and more momentum. let the knees bend.
Can't seem to get the knees to bend and the arms to go straight together. Okay.
Yeah, just a little bend in the knee. And remember that as far away from the body as it is, this is going to take more energy. So I want it to be nice and close to me. Trying to keep it nice and close to the body as you go. Let that left elbow unbend. Good. When it's overhead, you want it to be close to your body as well. Every time it's far away from the body, we're using energy we shouldn't. Good. Rotate in the opposite direction. Yeah,
Okay.
knees bend just a little bit. Hip translate. There we go. Spine stays tall, even still. Seconds. Good. Try and feel the viper land on your traps back there. Good. Pause. So you feel a lot of funky things going on. Number one, anytime your leg pops up, this is an indicator that number one, your center of gravity has now changed. Right?
Yeah.
And that viper will tell you real quick.
Yeah.
This exercise, I mean, even before I got into vipers, I would utilize the halo for a lot of different things. So for shoulder health especially, it plays a really key role, and mainly because axial rotation is practiced a lot. Also, scapular motion, right? So the glenohumeral rhythm is very active in getting that. And what you will see, if you actually took a camera and looked at your scapula is doing this. So upward rotation, right? And in this position, it is very hard to just accomplish elevation because of my elbow positioning. The scapula does that. So
Right.
reinnervating proper
That
upward rotation
Yeah.
is a good idea for this, right? But coordination is going to be key to trying to create a motion that can be accomplished even when the load is too heavy for us, right? So I have a 16K Viper at home, which I rarely ever bring out because nobody can play with it.
Yeah,
right?
it's heavy.
I look like I make it look easy, and then when I go to the park, people are like, "How much does that thing weigh?" And I'm like, "Pick it up," and they're like, "Holy cow! Like, how are you flipping this thing around?" And it's not because I'm strong, right? I mean, you can not be a power lifter or not be a heavy lifter and still be really good at this. I know. Have you ever heard of the Genesis Boys? Out of California. They were probably one of the first small groups to work with Institute of Motion for flows.
Okay.
Yeah. So they were the originators of Viper flows.
Okay.
And one of the guys' names is Trevor. He's a
Okay.
soccer player. And he's about yay big and looks kind of twiggy. But he can move a 20K around his body, whipping it super duper long all over the place.
Wow.
Very unassuming, but it's not about muscular strength. It's about fascial strength, coordination, harnessing momentum, and being in the right positions to continue moving without expending any excess energy that doesn't need to be there.
Okay.
Right? So this is very similar to, this is a very similar thing I'm trying to teach you here in the sense of every time I do allow my elbows to go straight, not only am I not using energy, and we'll practice just the side-to-side swing here. Yep, so the straighter I am, the more muscles I'm going to be utilizing to create this steady position, right? But if I do this, and I translate side to side, all of a sudden I feel like that swing kind of happens automatically. As I stand up to my center, the Viper gets pulled back toward the midline, and as I hinge and I push this slightly away and translate, it creates this kind of rubber band effect that helps me pull it back toward the midline, right? Try this with a 6K. This is my Frankenstein. It's been broken many times.
Been broken.
Yeah, it's
How
got a
did
lot
you
of
break them?
it's got a lot of cement glue. Actually, you know, there's one really good way to break it, and it's tossing it straight up in the air and having it land like this.
Oh,
It just collapses into itself.
okay. Well, I'm not gonna do that.
Don't do that.
Okay.
So feet will be closer together. Yup.
So.
Yep. And when you're reaching, try not to let it rock like a ride at Coney Island. Right? Try to reach, and the Viper tries to stay somewhat straight. Yep. And every time I reach, it's almost like a throwing motion, but it's controlled. Good. When you do come to center, I still want you to feel that very subtle kind of standing position at the middle.
I don't know if I can get all the way back.
It's tricky.
Up.
It's tricky. Good. That looks good. So when you are doing that motion, right, this is exactly what's happening when I do load up, right? And this is my loading, right? My elbow stays at my side. I come on up. When I dump it off, at the bottom, I'm trying to keep it a little closer to my body so it doesn't get away from me. But that same kind of hip translation that helps the Viper come back toward me is what I'm utilizing here. Keep it going. Good. Let it stay attached to you up top. Good. We're dumping it a little early. So let's practice that dump. I'm going to reach with a hip translation first. Good. Keep it going. Straight elbows. Straight. And then we bend when it comes up high. Good. Switch sides. Good. Nice. Let both knees bend when you translate to your right. And actually feel like you're trying to dump it off. Better. Fifteen seconds. Five, four, three, two, rest. Good. So that's another thing about utilizing a heavier Viper. A lot of times people are like, you want me to use the heavy one?
Yeah, it doesn't feel that much heavier
No.
once you get moving.
But also, once the motion becomes more efficient, the Viper itself feels lighter. And then when you go back to a lighter one, two things happen. Number one, the movement feels easier, way easier, obvious in contrast. The second thing that happens is sometimes people stop utilizing momentum. Why? Because the load doesn't feel like it's there.
It doesn't feel like it needs as much motion.
Yeah, and it feels like, you know what, I can just muscle this thing around. So I want you, when we do go back to the 4K, remember that those lines still need to be straight. Even though the load is lighter, it's gonna feel easier, but you still wanna try to utilize momentum to get it from place to place, and that demands you actually using your hips, right? Initiate with the hips, keep a tall spine, and when you're reaching, reach with your scapula, yeah? If I reach with my torso as I rotate, it's gonna look like this. If I reach with my scapula as I rotate, it's gonna look like this.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, it's
that's
practice.
hard. So it's really, I have to find more rotation without, yeah.
And lots of things to think about when you're practicing your FRC, right? That would actually make this easier.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit remiss in my FRC work right now. Just like not happening. It's partly, I mean, actually that's not true. Doing a lot of the cars with weight and stuff from here down, like the tibial cars and the hip cars and partial cars, but I'm still, other than the morning routine, not doing really much upper body because when I start to practice, irritate my shoulder every time. It's like, I can't quite get, I can start in the right position, but it's like it creeps in. And
You have any video of it?
no.
Video it, send it to me. I'll
Yeah.
send you a lot of feedback.
Okay.
That's the one thing that I pride myself on is that I will never limit my information that I give you to the hour, or in this case,
Yeah.
hour and a half. I will never limit it to that. So anytime you do send me a video, I'm gonna look at it at some point. I'm
Okay.
gonna send you feedback and always add to your arsenal.
Yeah, I just like, yeah, I'm kind of all over the map right now with my like
Do
movement
what you
practice.
have, or do what you can with what you have.
Right, that's what I'm telling
And don't
myself.
fret.
It's like it doesn't. Yeah, I'm like, I'm thinking about it. I'm certainly using all the cars, but the pails and rails still elude me when I work on myself. Like I can do a really small set with very low effort successfully, but as soon as I start going, oh, I can go a little harder.
Okay, well that's information too, right?
Right.
Maybe it's about just taking those small sets and the small effort, right?
Yeah.
5 to 10% efforts.
Yeah, and if I keep it really short, like one set of pails and rails, I can do okay with that. But as
Cool.
soon as I start, I don't know, my brain starts saying, well, more is better, harder is better.
Not always.
I know, I have to talk to myself about that a lot, but yeah.
Some days you want to turn the volume up and just make note